I'm a die-hard Pokémon fan. I've played nearly every game in the series, many multiple times over, and yet I've never completed the most popular challenge run for the main series titles, the Nuzlocke. I've tried many times through each generation, and I've never failed, but I get bored in the middle of each run. So, I had to decide how I could make this attempt much more interesting. And that's when I decided on using a randomizer, a program that would change nearly every aspect of any main series Pokemon game of my choosing. Now, in my favorite game in the series, Pokemon SoulSilver, all Pokemon encounters, trainer rosters, types, abilities, move pools, TMs, items, and just about everything else you could think of changing has been changed. Wait a second, isn't this the same intro as the first video? My editor is way too lazy. Well, it's certainly been a while since my last SoulSilver Nuzlocke video, and a lot has happened since then. I went 3 months without recording any footage for the series, so I decided I would just reset everything and play the game from the beginning. And to keep myself in the dark, I re-randomized everything. And this time, I actually wanted to complete the game, as opposed to playing through half of it and then not playing for 3 months. So, I got all my homework for the week done in advance, waited for a day when I wasn't working, sat myself down, and streamed for close to 12 hours in 2 sessions. I think that this will be the most footage I've had for any single video. So, to start out, we go through all the regular Pokemon intro stuff, and yet again, I chose Cyndaquil. There's not a single timeline in the vast multiverse in which I would not choose it. It is a fixed point in every timeline. So, with the aptly named Knuckles, the fighting-type Cyndaquil, I headed off to do Professor Elm's chores for him and pick up an egg from his friend, Mr. Pokemon. After retrieving the apparently rare item, Elm called me, a 10-year-old kid, to let me know that someone broke into his lab to steal a Pokemon. Why he called me before the cops? I have no clue. Can I check my Pokegear's number? Is it 911? As I rushed back to New Barktown, I encountered the kid who was creepily staring inside Elm's lab, and apparently his name is Jacqueline? That is the funniest thing I have ever seen. When I got back to Elm's lab, I decided, sure, Jacqueline, I guess, is a thief, he's rude, and he's a sore loser, but he's got to have at least a tiny shred of dignity left. So, I decided to tell the cops that his name is Jack. Yeah, that's right, his parents definitely weren't upset that they didn't get a girl. Is this why he hates his dad so much? So, now that all of the introduction stuff is out of the way, it's time for me to begin my quest to fill the Pokedex. Not sure how I'll finish that when I can only catch one Pokemon per area, but we'll certainly try. And that quest began with Brandon the Pidgey, who is not only a dragon type, but he also knows Headbutt. For those who don't know, in the Johto games you can use Headbutt to hit trees and try to encounter Pokemon. This is typically locked behind the second gym, but now I get a few extra team members before even reaching the first. So I added Caviar 2 to the team, followed by the Watcher. But unfortunately, while I was level grinding, the Watcher met a foe even stronger than Infinity Ultron. How could this happen? I'm supposed to be good at this game. And on the next route, I knocked out the first Pokemon I encountered, meaning I couldn't catch anything. And on the route after that, I ran out of Pokeballs. If any more members of my team die, it'll be really hard to replace them, won't it? So, when I got to Violet City, I talked to the former TV star Primo, and proved that I'm a huge fan of whatever show he was on. He was so impressed with my knowledge of his starring role on some TV show, I guess, I had never heard of the guy before, that he gave me 3 eggs, and seeing as though I couldn't catch a Pokemon to save my life, I decided to add 2 of them to the team. In the meantime, before those eggs hatched, I decided to not suck at the game for once, catching the Water and Ghost-type Titanic in Dark Cave. And in the Sprout Tower, I encountered the spirit of my Rattata from the previous attempt. Speedy Gonzalez was now Spooky Gonzalez. Now I spent the next 5 to 10 minutes of my life attempting to hatch 2 eggs, and the game was at 8 times speed. Could this take any longer? But in the end, I did add Wooloo and So This to the team. And really, I've obtained 8 Pokemon so far. 3 have been Ghost types, and 3 have been Dragon types. Where's the variety? I mean, it's not like most games start off with a ton of normal and bug type. Oh, wait. To ensure that I was up to the challenge of the first gym, I did a little bit more level grinding and managed to evolve Knuckles. That was really fast. I don't think I've evolved a Cyndaquil before the first gym before. But, you know, performance enhancers will do that to you. And now at last, 2 hours into the stream, I finally get to fight the first designer? So it turns out these aren't gyms, they're studios, and I'm not collecting 8 badges, I'm collecting prints. Faulkner and his Spoink were no match for the time-warping powers of So This, and I collected the Zephyr print, as well as the TM for Judgment? Really? The crazy thing is that some of the items on the early routes have been elemental plates that change Judgment's type, so having the actual move this early on and this widely available is insane. It gives me a ton of coverage on whichever Pokemon I want. Heading over to Azalea Town, the next Pokemon I encountered was an Ekans that I named after a dead game. And right after that, I decided to give Judgment to Knuckles, meaning that my starter will always have access to whatever type coverage he needs. I really don't like using TMs this early, especially when I'm forcing each Pokemon to learn every level up move in their arsenal, but this feels like the one move that Knuckles needs to always be relevant. In Union Cave, I caught Zygarde, and really, come on, what's up with all the dragons and ghosts? Is it too much to ask that I have a little bit of variety on my team? A hiker in the cave also had a Marshtomp that got way too close to killing So This and Caviar. I have not feared for the lives of my Pokemon this much in any game ever. By the time I got to Azalea Town, the Mafia was here, climbing down a well to take some Slowpokes hostage. I moved on with my life because, really, I just got to this town for the first time today. It means nothing to me. But this old man dragged me back over there to help him take back the hostages, only for him to break his back, and now I have to do all his work for him. So, I figured, while I'm down there, I may as well catch a Pokemon, and added Dopey the Slowpoke to my team, while I trained for the battle against the next designer, Bugsy, and his signature Pokemon, Gliscor. Thankfully, Wooloo's Mud Bomb was super effective, but oh no. Oh no. Yeah, it's Knuckles' turn. But what's that? After his super threatening Gliscor, he followed up with Feebas and Lotad? I got the high print super easily. Barely an inconvenience. As I left town, Jack showed up, and even though I tried to tell him about how I saved his reputation, he just wouldn't listen and tried to kill my Pokemon, only for his to wind up dead instead, helping So This achieve her final form and obtain maximum power. I solved the far-fetched puzzle in Ilex Forest way too easily while catching Bug, and moved on to Goldenrod City, where I caught Dreams the Drowsy, and realized that I really can't be narrating every single Pokemon I caught, or this video would be twice as long. But I began training her for the fight against the next designer, Whitney, because I really wanted a grass type on the team. What I didn't expect while training Dreams is that Corphish knew Chatter. In 3 hours, I have caused 2 easily avoidable deaths. And while some may say, Reggie, the point of the randomizer is to surprise you, there's no way you could have expected that to happen, I still think the blood of these 2 innocent lives is on my hands. I mean, I really should have been much more cautious. And now, heading into Whitney's studio, I had every reason to be scared for the integrity of my run. I almost lost Wooloo to Bugsy's Gliscor, I've already lost 2 Pokemon, and Whitney's notorious for being one of the toughest boss fights in Pokemon history. Even worse, when she sent out Claydol, it knew Sonic Boom, which always does exactly 20 damage. So the life of any Pokemon I used against it is on a timer. I used Body Slam, and oh my gosh, I paralyzed it? I might actually have a shot! Are you kidding me? So, instead, I just took advantage of the fact that it changes its own type to match that of the move it was just hit with. And just like that, I obtained the Plain Print. 3 badges in 4 hours is pretty good for someone who's never speedrun a game in his life, let alone a 37.5-hour RPG. Performance-enhancing cheat codes or no. When I reached the Sudowoodo blocking the path to Ecruteak City, I ran out of Pokeballs again. So, I killed it and took a detour to the nearest Walmart to make sure I didn't make that mistake again. Now, I don't know what I did to deserve this, but the next Pokemon I ran into was a Stamp, one of my favorite Pokemon from one of my favorite regions. So, I was unable to come up with a nickname when I miraculously caught it, so I just named it Scaraboo, the original name the translator intended. Unfortunately, however, on that route, in a double battle, my precious Wooloo met its untimely end. It was with a heavy heart that I replaced one ground type with another, and prepped myself and my new Stantler for the next studio battle. Oh yeah, and while I was exploring the city, I stopped a drunk Team Rocket member who was harassing a dancer, and I was rewarded with the move Surf. So now I can use my giant living boulder to cross bodies of water. When I got to the next studio, it turned out the designer wasn't actually there, so I had to trek to the burn tower, where I caught... Okay, that isn't funny past me. And Jack showed up yet again, deciding that he wanted to take another beating so badly that he was willing to chase me into this tower that looks like it could crumble any second. The fight was way too easy, though his Chimecho took hits really well, and okay, this isn't funny either. Once I took care of him, it was finally time for the next studio battle, and Morty's signature Pokemon is a Typhlosion. So, having access to its pre-evolution, knowing that it's at least part fighting, I figured that the smart move was to send in my Ghost type. Immunities, you know? But then it turned out that his Typhlosion really wanted to commit cannibalism. Well, guess what? Knuckles has a flying type move that says cannibalism is bad. Unfortunately though, Morty's strongest Pokemon was not the one I should have been worried about, because Mighty Aina knows everyone's favorite card game tactic.
I prepared a special surprise. The power of my Mirror Force trap card.
Fortunately, So This barely survived, and with help from the rest of the team, defeated Morty. I accepted the fog print and moved on to the next studio in Olivine City. In front of that studio, I met Jack, who berated the designer Jasmine for tending to the needs of a dying Pokemon in the lighthouse. Geez, he'd be a terrible pet owner. I guess that's why he just keeps letting his Pokemon die in our battles. After hearing about the Pokemon in need, I rushed to the top of the lighthouse to see how I could help. Jasmine showed me her prized Ampharos, who was gasping for air, and asked if I could retrieve a special potion from Cianwood City. Still reeling from the loss of my own Fluffy, I decided that I needed to help. I needed to make sure that this Ampharos survived. It's one of my favorite lines in all of Pokemon, and I couldn't let another one die. Plus, also, the story kind of requires that you save it in order to move on. On the way to get the potion, I decided to add some variety to the team by finally adding that grass type I always wanted. And I started by trying to train Bobby Socks the Meowth, which continues the trend of naming dog and cat Pokemon after family pets. The Meowth held her own in her first battle, but was defeated by a Luvdisc of all things. That is maybe one of the top 5 Pokemon I never thought anyone would lose to, but then again, I had Pachirisu on that list before 2014. Then I tried to train the Nidoran I had caught north of Goldenrod, which in preparation for having a Nidoqueen on the team, I had named Mother Nature. She survived the battle against a wild Tentacruel I ended up catching, Jelly Meowth, but unfortunately, she fell victim to the curse of another trainer's Geodude. Out of grass types to train, I decided I'd try training Jelly, who proved his worth in numerous trainer battles, including Morty's friend Ucine, who basically is just a parody of a Vegas magician who spends his days stalking the legendary Pokemon Suicune. I then got the secret potion, but also decided that while I was here, I may as well fight the next designer, Chuck, who seems to use a waterfall to paint. Seems messy to me, but to each his own, I guess. What might just be one of the simplest puzzles in Pokemon history was of course overcomplicated by yours truly, who didn't realize that you only had to turn one cog to turn off the waterfall. I seriously thought I had softballed myself here. Annoyed that I had turned off his source of paint, Chuck challenged me to a battle. It was here that I almost lost Titanic to an electric-type Kingler, and got freaked out by a Spiritomb that was able to tank hits from everyone on the team except Knuckles. But my victory was rewarded not just with a Storm print, but also with Jelly's evolution into Tentacruel. Chuck's wife also handed me the HM for Fly, and seeing as how easily a Pokemon could get knocked out, I quickly learned to appreciate moves like Fly, Bounce, and Dive, which give my Pokemon a full turn of protection before dealing a heavy hit. With Scaraboo now able to fly, I quickly headed back to Olivine City, where I gave the potion to Jasmine, saving her Ampharos and lighting up the lighthouse once more. Jasmine returned to her studio, where none of her trainers wanted to fight me. I always thought of Jasmine as super easy. By this point in the playthrough, I typically had Typhlosion, as well as plenty of water, ground, and fighting types, so her team was oftentimes a breeze. But this time, even though I had saved her precious Ampharos, she didn't hold anything back. Her lead, a Drapion, brought both Jelly and Titanic's health down to a third or less, only getting knocked out by a lucky critical hit from Brandon. Her Venomoth was fairly easy, even though it did survive Knuckles' judgment. It was, however, her final Pokemon, her Shiftry, that caused the most problems. On paper, So This seemed like the perfect choice. It turned out that Shiftry was a fire type, so Dragon resists it. Quagsire is also known for its strong defensive stats. But then the same 2 words that brought me relief earlier at the start of the match gave me complete shock. With a critical hit, So This lost nearly 100 HP in a single hit. In a panicked state, I used a potion, but then another one. A second critical hit in a row. Third time's the charm, no critical hit, but I was running out of potions, and So This was running out of health. Meanwhile, Jasmine could do this all day. They say that the bigger they are, the harder they fall. So This was one of the biggest heroes of the playthrough, coming in clutch a number of times. Heck, it took 3 critical hits from Flare Blitz, one of the strongest fire-type moves in the game, and more to knock her out. Had that first turn gone just a bit differently, the rest of the playthrough could have changed drastically. But as it stands, Sothis went out in a blaze of glory. But at least it weakened Shiftry enough so that Scaraboo could go in for the kill. My team was in shambles following the death of Sothis. In an act of pure rage, Knuckles evolved, vowing revenge against Jasmine while the rest of the team was recovering from their wounds. I thought long and hard about who to add to the team next, but we didn't just lose a team member. We lost a legend. We just couldn't replace her. So I needed to scout out prospects with potential, so I traveled west, searching for new Pokemon that could live up to her legacy. And that's when I met the next 2 potential legends. Alucard the Golbat was the first one who put up quite a fight against my team before getting caught, proving that he could contend with the best of the best. And at last, I may have finally found the grass type that would be able to remain on the team. And as I reached the westernmost part of the region, I had encountered a wild Tauros. And just as I had him right where I wanted him, I ran out of Pokeballs again. Dang it, I can't do anything right. Fortunately though, I reached the Safari Zone, a place where many rare Pokemon could be caught. So I paid the entry fee and carefully considered the different areas where I could catch a Pokemon before deciding I wanted to try and find a Lickitung. Well, how lucky was that? And what name would be more suiting of this hulking beast than, well, Hulk? I actually decided that Hulk was the most interesting option of the new recruits and added him to the team before heading back east towards Mahogany Town Studio. But just before I reached the town, Hulk succumbed to a deadly burn. Am I really just that irresponsible that I've let 7 Pokemon die in as many hours? So now, Alucard joins the team, back where he belongs, and I began training him. It was then that I encountered another of my favorites, Girafarig. And it turns out that before taking on this studio, I once again had to solve the problems of a town that I literally couldn't care less about. Are the people of the Pokemon world really just so incompetent that they require the help of a 10-year-old kid whenever anything fails to run perfectly smoothly? So now I needed to calm down a shiny Gyarados and put an end to some headache-inducing radio waves. Thinking that I had a free shiny on my hands, I rushed over to it, and dang it, there's a Magikarp. And that's how Fish ended up as the newest recruit on the team, while a shiny Gyarados ended up as free XP for Knuckles. Now, to shut down the radio waves, I teamed up with the champion, Lance, and we stormed Team Rocket's hideout, while I got to do literally the same 2 fights half a dozen times. The good news is that this tedious process resulted in Brandon reaching his final form, at least until I figure out how to transfer him to a ROM of Omega Ruby. And on top of that, Titanic evolved as well. The team was beginning to appear truly unsinkable. As I reached the end of the hideout, Jack showed up to do literally nothing but just shove me out of the way and leave, and then I easily defeated 2 heads of the Mafia. With my team stronger than it ever has been, and the villains out of the way, I was ready for the 7th studio battle, easily figuring out the puzzle, with a will forged in fire after all of the losses I had experienced along the way. But I was blinded by confidence. What I thought was a smart move in switching Titanic into Price's Charizard turned out to be a nightmare scenario, as it landed an all-powerful thunder attack that sank the unsinkable All-Star. The rest of the battle was a breeze, but now I was looking for a quick replacement for one of the longest-lasting members of the team, as Team Rocket took one final attempt to prevent themselves from becoming a dead meme or something, I don't know. I found my next recruit in Cyanide the Voltorb and began to train him before tragedy struck once again. The next portion of the run really was the nightmare scenario I had dreamed up early on when I failed to catch so many early Pokemon. Now I was left training Pokemon after Pokemon to take Titanic's spot, but problem after problem occurred, with the rapid deaths of Cyanide and Slither, as well as the accidental capture of Y the Unknown as I tried to find literally anything else outside of the ruins about. At last, I decided to bring in Dopey, who not only survived his early training, but thrived, even against Team Rocket, as I attempted to stop them from taking over Goldenrod's radio tower. But as he thrived, the nightmare scenario continued, as Alucard was unable to survive the burn resulting from the sacred fire of Team Rocket's Machamp. And again, I was in the need of another teammate, and this time I found one in Fish, who very quickly grew into a Gyarados, fueled by rage at the loss of so many of her comrades. She really led the team as we made our final push into the siege of Team Rocket's stronghold. As Dopey evolved into Slowbro as well, the entire team was fully evolved for the first time in the playthrough. As we reached the end of the hideout, Dopey survived a poisonous onslaught with just 1 HP, proving to be one of the luckiest members of the team, and thank goodness, because I don't know how I could bear another hour of trying to find a 6th team member. And at last, we reached the end of Team Rocket's Reign of Terror, finishing off the easiest boss rush of my life and ensuring that another Shiftry wouldn't claim the life of another Pokemon on my team. And finally, I could continue the real quest to earn all 8 studio prints as I quickly defeated the trainers at Claire's studio. And as for the champion's cousin, she was pretty easy to beat too. The real lack of challenge in her gym is probably why she gets so defensive after losing. She refused to give me her print, forcing me to take a test in the Dragon's Den as well, which I passed like a true pro. She begrudgingly gave me the Rising print, and to reward me for my efforts, Professor Elm gave me a Master Ball. And even after that, I was called over to Ecruteak City, where the city's dancers told me about a legendary Pokemon at the Whirl Islands. Excited by the opportunity to see this amazing Pokemon, I rushed right over, caught Greg the Seal, and murdered Lugia in cold blood. Finally, the game was near its end. I decided to use the heart scales and TMs I had collected through my journey to power up my team, and prepared for the biggest battle yet, the Elite Designers and the champion. As I trekked up to the Indigo Plateau, I caught an Ursaring who shared its typing with So This. So, in honor of the Fallen, I named her So That. When I reached the Pokemon League, I spent all of my money on medicine, knowing that I'd need every option available to keep my team alive, and walked into the first room where Will, the first of the Elite Designers, would have pushed over, but his Magmortar very nearly took Jelly down with him, and his Flygon proved to be a bit of a tank in his own right, proving tough for even Brandon to knock out. Up next was Koga, who led with a Dustox that knew Ingrain and Spore, truly the ultimate trickster Pokemon for a ninja who always loves to have something up his sleeve. And Bruno was the third Elite Designer, proving that he certainly was the toughest of the bunch, with his Carnivine knocking out Dopey and almost taking Brandon down too. It was only thanks to Scaraboo that he was unable to take a second life. Then he sent out a Blissey that gave Knuckles almost 10,000 XP upon its defeat. That was a level and a half, but now down to just 5 team members, I fought harder than I ever had against the final Elite, Karen, and quickly took down each of her Pokemon, no problem. But even though I suffered no losses in that fight, even though I was over-leveled, even though I had all of my Pokemon fully healed, ready to go, I still felt disadvantaged headed into that champion room. As I challenged the champion to a battle, with Brandon as the team's lead, I was relieved to see Charizard up front. While it was able to deal a little bit of damage, it was no match for the power and the type coverage of Brandon. I then sent out Scaraboo to combat Lance's Lapras, and it almost picked up the knockout, but came just short and was unable to make that last KO before she passed. Coming in to finish the job was Jelly, who learned Giga Impact upon defeating Lapras. And as strong as the move is, it was unable to knock out Lance's Dragonite, as it quickly fell to Thunderbolt. Thankfully, Knuckles was able to take down Dragonite, and Fish took care of Lance's Blissey, one-hit KOing it with a Meteor Mash. As I watched that Blissey's HP bar drop as slowly as you'd expect from the DS engine, I realized that beating the game was within my grasp. In spite of all the losses I had suffered, in spite of all my incompetence, all of my bad decisions, this was actually doable. And even though his Blaziken managed to survive a super effective Aeroblast, it couldn't even land a hit on Brandon before getting defeated. In the end, the fight came down to his last Pokemon, a Garchomp, and my starter, Knuckles. Lovely. This Garchomp is just a reminder that in a week's time from recording, I'd be fighting Cynthia. Garchomp and Knuckles traded hits back and forth, and for a minute there, I thought I could lose my starter, especially when I used Judgment only for it to end up not being very effective. All of that was made up for with an Aeroblast that knocked the wind from Lance's sails, and just like that, it was all over. I did it! I finally completed my first Nuzlocke, after 10 years of attempts that I just got bored of over and over again. I forced myself to sit down and play through an entire game, and in just 2 sessions, I had massacred the Johto League, taking each and every one of the designer's prints, as the team that helped me along the way earned their spots in the history books of the Johto region, as well as the history books of my own gaming experience. At last, I could rest knowing that it was finally over. Oh crap, I have to play through the Kanto region, don't I?